Welcome! This series of videos is all about the journey of rebuilding our front porch. We're sharing it both as a story for our friends and family to look back on, and as a practical guide for anyone tackling a similar project. We're Aaron and Anna, a couple in our 30s with 2 kids, a few big projects behind us, and plenty more dreams ahead. We'd love for you to follow along as we build together. Back in the winter of 2021, we bought this old house right in the heart of downtown. We were drawn to its classic style, and it was a great value, which of course meant it needed a lot of work. The most obvious problem, at least to anyone driving by on the busy street, was the triangle of missing siding where the porch roof used to be. Only the deck remained, and since this west wall faces the afternoon sun, without that roof, the heat blazed straight through the picture window and uninsulated walls. Restoring that shade was at the top of our list. Having never built a porch or even looked critically at the architecture of a house, we needed a starting point. Our neighbor to the south has a nearly identical house with what is probably the original porch, shown here, so the first idea was to borrow heavily from that. We dug up Google Street View imagery of our house from August 2011, and that shows it was indeed very similar. Unfortunately, my legal team, tells me that I cannot put those images in this video. But we have this one from 1900. Ours is the middle one of the 3 houses here, built in 1890. There is not enough detail in this photo to see every stylistic element, but we can confirm some basics that the porch had even back then. Round columns, an exposed beam, some sort of railing, and a hip roof. When making our offer for the house, we had penciled in $20,000 for the porch. Initial brainstorming for this porch had some big ideas. Why not wrap around the side of the house too, do some nice dental work frills, pedestals under the columns, a nice railing, and even a fieldstone foundation. In hindsight, we didn't really know much about whether these things fit our house. Lots of them don't. You can see, we even thought that an enclosed 3-season porch would be a good idea. Anyways, at this point we started calling around for estimates with these ideas in mind. Here's the one that I was still able to find in my filing cabinet. This was peak COVID construction labor shortage time and materials were high too, so the numbers came in pretty surprising. I can see now that this one was reasonable for the full wraparound version as described, and given market conditions. Another estimate came in at more than double this one, more than we paid for the house. As we were mulling over these estimates and thinking about design details, we started to notice that we couldn't find newer built porches that had any old house charm. And the builders weren't saying things like, "Oh yeah, I built the porch over there and I think that would be true to the style of your house too, check it out." So it seemed like a sizable risk to hope that a builder would pleasantly surprise us by designing and building a unicorn of a porch, especially when the demand for builders was the highest it had been in decades. So maybe if we studied up and fully designed that unicorn ourselves, then we could find someone to do only the building part, detailed design done by us. But once we started learning and planning, the temptation to execute all those fun details ourselves became too strong. This is how we ended up committing to our largest DIY project to date. Like most of our projects, we started by Googling things. Old porches, folk Victorian porch styles, bad porches, you get the picture. One of the first and best resources that we found was the Old House Guy blog. He has a superb series of articles about good porch style elements, and I love that he isn't afraid to show bad things too. There's a series of 6 articles related to porches, and he has many more about other old house topics too. Article 1 of the porch series covers the basics of porch design and how they augment a house. Some of the article covers repairing an existing porch, but we were already missing so much that it was a given for us to start over. Article 2 is almost entirely about how low railings are so important visually. The images in here will make you forever hate tall railings as required by code. You can use various historic statuses to potentially avoid this requirement. Or, at the end here, there are some good examples of booster rails that are high enough for safety, but seem shorter to the casual eye. Article 3, how to have great porch skirting. We can see that basic lattice is bad, Simply stepping up to slightly nicer lattice and installing it in frames makes it good. Some visual structure to break up the lattice and which supports the column down to the ground looks good. It just has to look like it supports the column. And the article finishes off with some good stuff about sawn balusters, another great skirting style. Article 4, blue ceilings are the way to go. If you can't stand the blue, brown paint or fake wood grain are also acceptable. Article 5, low slope roofs are authentic. The flat metal and hidden gutter of this roof is ideal for many stylistic reasons, but I think nearly impossible to do nowadays. There are lots of good tips here for metal or asphalt porch roofs, which is what 95% of us are going to have. Article 6 shows the basics of good columns. The size and alignment with the beam are important, but not really intuitive until you see some good and bad examples like this. Another resource that I found was this guide to porch construction from the Roanoke, Virginia government. I can't say it better than the document itself. This section dissects the components of a porch and how they can be properly constructed with readily available materials. I took strong inspiration from all of these cross-sections that are so clearly marked with suggested dimensions. It is hard to overstate how useful this document can be to a rookie porch builder. The local building code is a must to consult at this stage. You don't want to design or even build something wrong and be forced to undo a bunch of work. My city provides quite approachable PDFs of information for home builders, and the deck portion of this was relevant and educational. This will be mostly structural stuff like floating platform versus attached to the house, piers, posts, connectors, beam and joist spans and spacings, and stairs and railings. Even though most of this stuff is hidden in the final product, some of it can impact your design. For example, with a flush beam, you will have posts directly under the rim, which will require your skirting, post wrap specifically, to extend beyond the fascia. Something that I found later, after the porch was complete, is the collection of plans at freefarmhouse.com. These are free plans for building vintage-feeling farmhouses which have classic porches. Many parts of these porches are documented in even greater detail than the Roanoke guide, and there are sections about how to make tasteful decisions when choosing size, materials, and more. How about some old-fashioned paper-based educational material? Yeah, I did step away from the computer and head down to the local library. I checked out the only 2 books they had about building decks and porches. From these, I gained a better idea of what the structural framing of a typical deck is like. Another piece of the puzzle. Pretty much no relevant style was found in these books, though, as all examples were contemporary designs. Next, I went around the neighborhood to see what was locally authentic. There are lots of other old houses around. It is important to build things which look like they belong in one's neighborhood. I took these pictures shortly after we made the decision to do a curved wraparound porch, so they focus on that part of them. This is a big old Victorian straight to the west of us. The columns, beam, and railing are of great traditional style. I love the pedestals under the columns. If you have railings, then these really complete the look. They look great on Victorians, but would be questionable on something of simpler style, such as our folk Victorian. The substantial size, about 12 inches in diameter, of the columns is evident in this picture, and I think very appropriate for this deeper porch and large house. Here is the curved corner of that porch. The gutters and drain pipe detract some, but it is an understandable compromise. This one is a block northwest of us. The house and porch are similar in size to ours. Note that just like the last one, there is no column in the middle of the curve. Most I have seen which omit that column have developed a sag there. I chose to put a column in the curve, but had some visions of what I would do if I hadn't. I would run a super beefy beam hidden in the ceiling between the 2 columns to support all the cantilevered rafters, and the curved beam underneath would be just for looks. I think the columns, caps, and bases are great on this one. The soffit material on the ceiling is not ideal, and the skirting is not good, but very typical of the neighborhood. This porch on the same block as our house was completely rebuilt recently, maybe 30 years ago. The homeowner did it himself, learning as he went. So this served as good inspiration that a big porch project like this can be done DIY. The house is large and ornate, so the massive brick base and upper detail fit the house really well. We initially thought this porch would be a great style inspiration for ours, but as we learned more, that was not the case. It is simply a different style of house. This is the only porch I have in my photo collection, which features turned posts instead of columns. Turned posts are great on some porches, and in other cases, a round column is the way to go. Do some research to see which is the best fit for your house. This big, somewhat ornate house gets a big porch to match. The small-sized but numerous brackets carry through from the house eaves to the porch, and dental work is added. Overall, very nice, and I love the authentic wood siding. The skirting on it is worth mentioning. It looks strong enough that the lack of visually distinct support under the columns is okay. Those are blocks, granite I think, stacked with wide spacing. This house is a Queen Anne Victorian 2 blocks east of us, so also a significantly different style from our house. These will typically have more complex detailing. There are many layers of well-finished details and beautiful sweeping curves, and this may be the best porch in the neighborhood. 10 points off for that skirting though. We still have plans to add accent colors to the moldings on our columns to dress them up like this one. Someday. This house was for sale around the same time as we purchased ours. It was quite a wreck, but enough remained that it could be rebuilt, which is what the new owners did slowly over 2 years. They did a pretty good job. All the columns are back to round, the pedestals are rebuilt, the fascia and beam are not sagging, and the whole yard is cleaned up. From a bit closer, I could take points off for the strangely variable width fascia, mismatched pedestal sizes, and slumped roof, but really, it is amazing that the effort was put in to preserve the porch at all, and that they were able to keep 90% of the style of it. With this education and observation behind us, it was time to make some design decisions for our own build. For overall size, a width of 25 feet to span the whole front of the house and an 8-foot depth were appropriate, based on what was there before and on others in the neighborhood. Wraparound porches are fairly common nearby, so we thought we could pull that off too. The side part would really help shade from the sun on the south side of the house, so it wasn't only for looks. Wraparound to us pretty much always meant a curved corner, not a square one. All of the examples in the neighborhood are curved. The looks of a curved corner just can't be beat, but it has very real downsides. First of all, it is so much more work, but we were looking for a challenge. And it gives up a decent amount of square footage, which also was okay for us. Our porch faces a loud, busy street, and the late afternoon sun really beats down from the west, so we knew we would not need space for big or frequent gatherings. I think around this time is when I started estimating some costs. I needed to have a rough idea of the impact of some of these choices. Going DIY meant labor was free in a sense, so we could splurge on materials, but still some general numbers would be good. I started with a deck planning tool on the Home Center's website. By putting in the dimensions and a few design details, it designs the structure, base only, and prices out the needed lumber. So I did that for a front porch and a wraparound porch to have those numbers to compare. Then I worked up some numbers for accessories such as columns, piers, and guesses on roofing stuff. There was nothing surprising in the numbers. Adding a wraparound was nearly a doubling in the square footage of the porch, and therefore a near doubling of material costs. One of the larger costs was the decking. Savings could be made here by going with lower priced materials, but the total, even for the larger plan, was doable for us, so we were able to commit to the wraparound vision and to using a hardwood decking. My first thought for that hardwood decking was Ipe, which I knew of as the longest lasting hardwood commonly used for decks. Somewhere in my internet research I became aware of black locust, which has the same durability. Black locust is native to the Appalachian Mountains, but grows well elsewhere, and is even semi-invasive and undesirable in some places. Ipe grows in the Brazilian rainforest, and while efforts have been made to ethically source it, I think it is still a little fishy. Environmental concerns are a little important to me. Anyways, it just makes more sense to use the kind of local thing rather than shipping wood in from another continent. And lastly, black locust is said to glow under a black light, which I think is super cool, but I have not tried it yet. Why not synthetic deck boards? They look fake, and some types have issues such as getting too hot in the sun. Alignment of the stairs and columns was the next consideration. The front door should be somewhat close to centered between columns. Even more important is alignment with any sidewalk that you are keeping, which should be centered on the stairs. And most important is uniform column spacing. The distance between the two ends of my curved corner was about 13 feet, so with a supporting column in the middle of the curve, I would have column centers 6.5 feet apart. The curved spaces are never viewed at the same angle as the front spaces, so they don't have to exactly match, but they should be close. The front of our house is about 25 feet wide. 5 columns means 4 spaces, each just over 6 feet between centers. This is pretty close to the 6.5 foot spacing previously calculated for the curve. A design with 4 columns, 3 spaces on the front flat, would yield 8 foot spaces, which would be noticeably mismatched to the 6.5 foot ones on the curve. 3 columns with 2 spaces would mean 12 foot spaces, which may have been okay paired with a full 13 foot space on the curve, with the middle column omitted. So 5 front columns was the best choice for us, and odd numbers of architectural elements are said to be more attractive as well. 3 would have been great if doing no middle column on the curve. With 5, the door ended up pretty close to centered, and offset in the preferred direction for our existing storm door. So then I spent a few hours learning FreeCAD and worked up this model of the porch. I was able to verify that the basic proportions of the design seemed good, and it was helpful to have the rough structure drawn out when estimating quantities of materials. For the finer details of fascias, trim, stairs, and similar, I did not actually have those worked out at this point, other than thinking I would follow that Roanoke style guide as closely as possible. And I guess that was good enough to go down to City Hall and get a building permit. Our city has a reasonable process for this, and the staff were excited that the missing triangle of siding was finally going to be fixed up. Our property is in a Renaissance zone, so I was able to list the porch project and other things in an improvement plan and get a future break on property taxes. And with that, we were on to the construction phase, if you count demo as the beginning of construction. We do, so demo and then building the base of the porch will be in the next video, and then after that will be a video showing the building of the roof and painting the entire porch. Thank you for watching. If you have any tips to share, please leave them in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to the channel to see those next videos from us soon.